What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, August 24th, 2016, hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Kaahumanu Friday. And another, we'd like to think it's a relaxing weekend, but I don't think so. Things are getting really, really crazy. Of course, we're coming up on the Labor Day holiday in the very near future as well. All right, we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Story that's ongoing right now. Apparently, the American University in Kabul, Afghanistan, has been attacked. Apparently it's still ongoing. Hundreds of students and professors are stuck inside. One person is confirmed dead. 14 others are hurt. And the attack involves bombs and gunfire. And it's an ugly, ugly situation. I get the feeling those Afghani people don't like Americans. And I can't imagine why that would be. But the U.S. Embassy in Kabul has advised U.S. citizens, first of all, to avoid the area near the American University, and probably if you're able to do it, get out of the country, because it looks like things may be developing there. And maybe Afghanistan is going to try and get rid of their U.S. puppet ruler. Now, getting on to the political scandals, more and more information is coming out about the Clinton Foundation, and the donors to this foundation also include dozens of media organizations and individuals, including NBC Universal, News Corporation, Turner Broadcasting, Thomson Reuters. And so this is why the corporate media is fully on board with Hillary Clinton. They're neck deep in all the corruption going on over there at the Clinton Foundation. So, of course, they're protecting Hillary in order to protect themselves, because if it all comes out, you're going to see a lot of stockholders saying, I think it's time to change the board of directors and the CEO. So it's all linked together by money and whatever shenanigans were going on over at the Clinton Foundation. Now, the Clinton Foundation likes to claim that they have spent some of their money, 6% is the latest estimate, on charitable operations. And apparently they did send some money down to Haiti following the earthquake down there. But the money actually didn't get down to the Haitian people. In fact, one of the emails came on out and showed that the Clinton charitable effort in Haiti included pulling together investors for a $26.5 million open pit gold processing facility. So under the guise of charity, they were out there buying up cheap land post-quake and getting ready to start a gold mine. Now, another revelation regarding Haiti shows that the State Department gave special access to top Clinton Foundation donors. And it brings to mind the case of this Miami businessman who's currently serving a 12-year prison sentence after scamming the government out of millions. His name is Claudio Osorio. He's a Clinton Foundation donor who got $10 million from the government after the Clinton State Department pulled some strings and was supposed to be going on down to Haiti to build houses, and instead he just spent the money on his own lavish lifestyle. He claimed he was going to build 500 homes for the Haitian people. Only 6 were actually built. And what that tells us is that even that 6% of the Clinton Foundation money that was spent for so-called charitable work may not have actually been spent on charitable work after all. It was just scammed out. Now, Judicial Watch says there is more to come about the Clinton Foundation, and they're saying that they would be very surprised if the Clinton Foundation was not shut down in the immediate future. And, of course, then they'll start shredding all the documents and paperwork to avoid RICO prosecution. But the damage is already done, because all of this Clinton Foundation, State Department pay-for-play is proving that Hillary Clinton, as president, will basically be selling the nation to the highest bidder. She's already trying to take the America built by generation after generation of Americans and barter it to illegal immigrants and refugees in exchange for votes. She's treating the country like it's her own personal property, and of course it is not. So it's a red warning flag as to what's going on. Now, finally, the corporate media is starting to ask the question I've been asking a long time. Did Hillary Clinton violate the Espionage Act? This is coming out of citizensgroup.us. And they're out there basically saying that, yes, there is indications that Hillary Clinton was exposing national secrets to foreign interests in exchange for quid pro quos. Now, they stopped short of calling it an outright spy operation. But under Title 18, espionage does include giving secure information to people who are not authorized to have it. So they're starting to hem and haw and sort of dance around the edges of that question that I think deserves an answer. Was Hillary Clinton repeating the 1996 Chinagate scandal, selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests using that private email server with weaker security than Ashley Madison, and using the so-called charitable foundation to collect and launder the money? Now, Still Reports is out with a concern because, well, first of all, let's do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network at this moment, and we're talking about politics. Still Report is out there responding to allegations that Hillary Clinton, who's going into the debates, may try and use these invisible spy earpieces, these in-the-ear transceivers that you can't see without actually doing, a peek into the ear canal. And these have been around for a very, very long time. They're used to send cues to TV personalities during live broadcasts. They're used to cue movie stars who can't remember their lines on the set. And there are indications that Barack Obama used one of these. And, of course, this is another way of cheating because the whole point of the debate is to see one candidate debating another candidate, not have Donald Trump debating a room full of Hillary Clinton advisors. So they're trying to figure what can they do about this. Can they demand that the candidates have their ears inspected after they take their place at the podium? And, of course, Hillary will reject that. Use of broadband radio jammers. Maybe. Might not be a bad idea. But if there's a way to cheat, we know Hillary will do it. Now, John Oliver, I used to like the Last Week Tonight show, but he has gone so totally overboard in support of Hillary Clinton. Apparently, on his previous show, John Oliver came on out and said Donald Trump needs to drop out of the race, tell America the campaign was just a publicity stunt, and this will make him a legend. He'll be remembered in the history books for all of this stuff. And to me, this signals desperation on the cusp of madness, and I am no longer going to DVR Last Week Tonight. And it gets even weirder than that. Now, there's this social justice advocate and political strategist, Yemu Green. She was being interviewed on Fox Business Network discussing the Clinton Foundation, and the host was asking her, well, if the Clinton Foundation should be shut down if Hillary becomes president, why wasn't it shut down as Secretary of State? And Yemu Green wasn't going to answer that question. She danced away from it, started screaming, and finally just came on out and said, my family will die if the Clinton Foundation is not allowed to continue doing what they're doing. And it was a pure panic reaction. Because, yes, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, they were saying there's the possibility for conflict of interest. And now we know, because of the leaked emails and the good work at Judicial Watch, yes, Hillary Clinton was running another pay-for-play scam. That's another long-time Clinton tactic. They were doing it with the Commerce Department and who knows who all else back during Bill Clinton's presidency. And Congress was investigating the pay-for-play on those commerce trade missions because you didn't get a seat on one of those trade missions unless you donated to Bill Clinton's reelection fund. They were about to indict Commerce Secretary Ron Brown. He had indicated he was going to go ahead and testify as to who told him to do all this. And then, of course, there was that very strange plane crash that ended not only Ron Brown, but the investigation itself. And they're really reaching to try and preserve Hillary. Congressman Matt Cartwright, Democrat from Pennsylvania, was being interviewed by Stephanie Ruhle regarding Hillary's perjury, and he's trying to minimize it and trivialize it, and basically came on out and said, Hillary Clinton is really honest. She only perjured herself 3 times. I mean, you people are being so picky. It was only 3 times. 3 is enough. If you commit perjury once in a court of law or before Congress, you are supposed to go to jail for that. Now, Donald Trump is showing his new gloves-off strategy since he changed campaign managers. He's slamming Hillary Clinton for third world corruption, and he's wrong on that. This is first world corruption, but it's still corruption. He's calling for an independent counsel, and yes, we need to have one. Even Rudolph Giuliani is out there slamming Hillary Clinton, and he made a statement that's actually quite true. If Giuliani had done only a tenth of what Hillary Clinton has done, he would be in prison. And he's asking, why isn't Hillary in prison? Well, because Hillary can blackmail the entire government. She and Bill Clinton have been tangled up in the darkest secrets of the U.S. government going all the way back to that 1980s CIA-sponsored gun and drug running operation. And it was illegal from beginning to end. It was not officially sanctioned or approved by congressional oversight. It was a violation of the Boland Amendment, a violation of the Logan Act, a violation of all the drug laws that we have in this country. And everybody who was part of the smuggling or the gun manufacturing or the running or the money laundering operation, they all became insanely rich enough to launch their political careers. Remember, when Bill Clinton first became president, his 4 top fundraisers, who were known for walking into the campaign office with boxes of cash, all died under suspicious circumstances, one of them being Vincent Foster. Now, we found this old video. It's posted to the front of WhatReallyHappened.com, and this is from back in the early 2000s, where Hillary Clinton is out there saying, yes, we need stricter immigration control. We need a wall across that border. And back then she was saying exactly the same thing Donald Trump is saying now, which is, again, further proof that, first of all, most Americans think we should have a reasonable immigration policy and not just open up the border. And second, it's a reminder that Hillary Clinton just flip-flops. She says whatever she thinks the people in front of her want to hear, and that's what she says. And you cannot take her at her word about anything. Her support among black voters is eroding on that one point alone. Hillary is saying all the things the black people want to hear, and they're not believing that she'll actually carry through on any of it. All right, let's take a phone call. Mark in Oregon. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike.
Aloha.
Mike, yes, sir. And again, thanks for the wonderful information and the way that you, if I may use the word stylishly, put it forward. You certainly keep me involved on an intellectual level. And
well, good. That's what we're trying to do because, I encourage all Americans to think because that makes the government really, really nervous.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of deception out there, and one has to actually logically and rationally go through the steps of realizing it and seeing how it all fits together in its different parts that affect all of us in a really negative, evil, bad way. And you bring our faculties in that area up to the fore, and I think that's a great service. As I say, I don't want to overdo it, but it's an unusual thing, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Mike, I had the good fortune of just turning on the flat screen because there unusually this day there really wasn't anything to interest me otherwise, and I do have regular programs such as yours and Alex Jones that I listen to. But at 11:43, it just happened to be that I turned the TV on, and the whole Trump speech down in Florida was just beginning.
Yes.
And at the very beginning of it, it was like fate. And I really, as time goes on here, and Donald Trump is certainly picking up the frequency of his exposure to the public, and he does get really good attendant publicity, despite the mass media, the bought media that you've gone over so well, on C-SPAN. And C-SPAN does a real good job. I'm sure you're aware they show the whole speech from beginning to end, even after the speech is done, and Donald Trump walking through the crowd like that, which to me, on the face of it, looks very dangerous. But somehow they have his security under control. I don't know exactly how. I don't even know if they use metal detectors, but God's got his hand on him, ultimately. I truly believe that. And that's what I get as a basic and main impression, is that he's beyond the usual human being here. To whatever aspect you go to of the human faculties as they're given to most of us, and that we have intelligence, we have emotion, in healthy ways. He is really just making that impression on me as we go along here, and we're still several months out and a little bit more for Election Day, and he's hitting it hard. He's going past the feints and the counter punches, and he's getting really on the offense. As far as Hillary Clinton and the illegalities and just what kind of person she and her husband are and have been, and what damage that they've done to this country in foreign areas of defense as well as domestic policy. Basically, he doesn't go and say as much. They're kingpins on the operative level, on the high managerial level.
Hello, are you still there? Okay, we seem to have lost Mark, so let me respond to that. First of all, from the point of view of the corporate media, they're kind of stuck. They don't want to report. Okay, hang on. We lost our RBN connection, and I don't know why. Okay, let's see. Okay. Boy, don't you just love living in this third world kind of situation where nothing really works the way it's supposed to be. So let's see. Call me. All right, I'm still able to send text back and forth to our control room over Skype, but for some reason Skype just quit working. And there we go. All right, and we're back here, and we had a little bit of a technical glitch here. So as I was saying, the corporate media are in a bit of a jam. They don't want to report on all the negatives about Hillary Clinton. There aren't really any positives that they can report on, because she really hasn't done anything that's worked out very, very well. So their only option is to try and attack Donald Trump. But every time they do that, they're only increasing his media exposure. So it's actually counterproductive. Mark, I understand you're still there. And did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Oh, I could go on quite a bit with the frequency of events that are occurring this day in this presidential election. I've just never seen everything brought down to such a crystallization of good and evil, represented in the two candidates themselves. And I would just finish, Mike, basically, and I appreciate your time, I really do, that people who are believing on Hillary Clinton is they want her as our next president here. I heard some of them call up right after the speech was over. C-SPAN had call in.
Yes.
And people call in, and they have the different categories of Democratic, Republican, Independent, other. And the ones that called in, there were only about 2 out of 8 that I heard that supported her candidacy. They sound like, and I'm not being deprecating here, I don't mean to be mean or anything, like just a fact. They sound like they have IQs at about room temperature.
Well, so, I mean, anybody who's really thinking about, they understand what Hillary's all about. But Hillary's PACs literally are hiring people to call into these shows and promote Hillary Clinton. These are not genuine American citizens with honest opinions. These are people who are paid to call in and say, we need a woman president. I don't care if she's killed people. I don't care if she's crooked. We need a woman president. And, she's
just like the paid protesters.
Yeah, very much. We got to let you go here, unfortunately, and take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And apparently we had a momentary break in our Skype connection. Fortunately, it happened on the commercial break. So we're all back to battery here right now. And I don't know if it's just our crumbling national infrastructure or if, in fact, Hillary's hacker squad has found a way to break in and disrupt our Skype feed. The attacks on my server have been unrelenting. And I'm having to, unfortunately, purchase all kinds of new and additional security stuff to keep that going, which is not cheap. All right, so let's get back to the news here. 3 days ago, Trump's motorcade was attacked. And the media didn't even mention it until today. Now, can you imagine what the media would do if somebody attacked Hillary's motorcade? Oh, it's those evil Republicans. It's those violent Trump people. Remember a couple of months ago they were saying Trump is the cause of all the violence at the Trump rallies. And then we find out these crowds are all bought and paid for. The rent-a-ruckus people and so forth and so on. And Soros was funding a lot of this. We had that other situation where Hillary's supporters literally attacked donors coming out of a Trump fundraiser, throwing feces at them, eggs at them, physically assaulting them. And the police didn't do anything about it. And I have to wonder why. Because, first of all, you've got assault and battery going on. And more than that, you have a violation of Title 18, Section 594, which is voter intimidation, and that is punishable by a year in jail. And my concern about all of these Hillary disruptors, it is a replay of how Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany. He had his little action group, the brown shirts. And what they would do is, first of all, they would change out of the brown shirts and just put on regular clothes, and they would show up at the rallies of Hitler's opponents, and they would just cause violence, throw furniture, beat up on people, and to basically get them out of the race. And that's what Hillary's people are trying to do to Donald Trump. And we all need to recognize she's using the same tactics as Adolf Hitler. Anybody here want to actually bet that she'll stop acting like Hitler if she gets the White House? I don't think so. Hillary Clinton is a creature of habit because much of what she's doing now is a replay of what was done before. State Department pay for play, Commerce Department pay for play. Selling secrets for foreign donations, 1996, and again today. She's recycling. Good for her, she's recycling, but shows she's a creature of habit. She's not going to change her behavior when she gets into the White House, the way Kennedy did. Now, I'm starting to see a lot of very alarming articles coming on out. This example is from thelibertybeacon.com. Trump, our last hope to take this country back without the guillotine. And I do agree with that sentiment. This is our last chance to have a peaceful revolution in this country and get us back on the path of being a republic with a democratically elected government, rather than this oligarchy, this fascist economic dictatorship it's been. And if this is thwarted, then I think we are going to be looking at a bloody revolution somewhere down the road, because John F. Kennedy said it best. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And I hope it doesn't come to that. But how bloody this is all going to be is in the hands of the current ruling elites. How far are they willing to go to cling to power? That's the question. All right. Now, moving on here. Do you remember all this talk about how Hillary's lawyers are going across the country trying to overturn voter ID laws in state after state after state? This is very expensive. It's all billable hours for the attorneys. And a lot of people are wondering who was paying for this, and it turns out, because of the DC leak documents, George Soros is the mastermind behind this plan to erase voter ID laws and bring 10 million fraudulent votes into the election in November for Hillary Clinton. Got to take a break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And before we take a phone call, I want to take a moment to have kind of a personal observation here. And this is really going to relate to those of you who have cell phone service that is metered. In other words, the more you use your cell phone, the more you are paying, because I've been getting a lot of scam phone calls. A real high volume of them. And I just went back through my little call log list for the last 24 hours. I got more scam calls than I got calls that actually had some meaning to me from friends and so forth and so on. And so all these scammers, even if you don't fall for the scam, they're still costing you money. And of course, the government can't be bothered with doing anything about that because, hey, this increases revenues to the cell phone companies, and you know that they'll pay more taxes, and things that make money are good in the United States, and things that don't make money, well, we're just not going to deal with that at all. All right, so let's grab a phone call. Steve in California, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, add to that list, other than battery, throwing the fecal material at people, these are the Hillary supporters. You could add also exposure to potentially harmful material. All you have to do is go to OSHA. You can see that. That would be listed in the category of hazardous material. Mm-hmm. But that's not what I called on. Actually, I just wanted to point out to your listeners, you have a really sharp listening audience, that just break down who the Hillary supporters are. These people are either provoking violence, and then they turn it around. If you defend yourself, that you're creating violence. But let's look at who these people are. First of all, they're feminists. Mm-hmm. And number two, you would say the people that have their hand out that want free stuff that somebody else has to pay for. And this also, the third one would be the Jerry Springer crowd. And your last caller, 2 callers ago, had it right. You know, their IQs are the equivalent of the room temperature. They're not very sharp people. They have an agenda. They want free stuff, and they want somebody else to pay for it. So this is the Hillary supporter crowd. I think, we know the polls are being rigged. They're not true. And I agree with you. We definitely need a landslide victory so they don't steal this election. No doubt about it.
No doubt about it. One of the things that should be very worrying to us all is that Hillary has really been running her campaign as a personality cult, where Hillary is the star, Hillary is the figure, we all want to be like Hillary, we want to be Hillary's friends and so forth. And that was also a tactic that Adolf Hitler used. He built up this mythos of the superior Aryan race, which basically were his supporters, and went to disaster. Remember Jim Jones and the whole Kool-Aid thing. Personality cults are very, very, very dangerous. And you're right about the feminists. Hillary has got a lot of them on her side who literally have this idea. They don't care what she's done. They don't care about the dead bodies. They don't care about the corruption. It's just time we have a woman president. And these are actually a lot of the same people who are telling us that we should elect Barack Obama because he was a black man. It's time for a black president. We got Obamacare, and we got NSA spying, and we got all these wars and a destroyed economy. And I think thinking voters need to raise their standards. This isn't a fashion show. This isn't equal opportunity. It's not affirmative action. The person that sits in that Oval Office has to be the one best qualified to be there, and certainly the least criminal. And so my advice to people right now is to stop thinking in terms of whether you have a reason to vote for Donald Trump or not, and just focus on all the reasons we have to vote against Hillary Clinton.
You know, I call her the chameleon candidate. The woman changes her. I mean, she goes in front of a Hispanic community. She's grabbing jalapeno peppers and chewing on jalapeno peppers. If she's in a black community, she's a soul sister. This woman is a chameleon. She will pander to whoever she's speaking to. She is a phony, a total phony.
Oh, she is. I've seen some of the speeches she's making the black community. She literally takes on the vocal affectations of the black community, you know, and really, as she changes her whole voice patterns and she's trying to talk like she's at least partly black, it really is just a complete sham.
It is. Hey, thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here and get on back to some other things. It's time to talk about the war zones because things are getting very, 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 very intense over there. Turkish tanks have crossed the border into Syria in a military op to retake the city of Jarablus from ISIS. Now, Syria is not happy about this because Turkey, like the United States, is not invited in to Syria to deal with whatever it is Turkey is dealing with. Only Russia is there at the invitation of the Syrian government. And so Syria is basically upset with them, and they have to be. They have to be. Even if Turkey is legitimately going after ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Syria can't go along with that without the U.S. saying, well, hey, you let Turkey in to deal with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So wasn't played out all that well. Another article coming on out from Global Research, the dangerous temper tantrums of the U.S. war hawks, where they're out there screaming, we're going to make Russia and Iran pay a price for fighting terrorism in Syria because, by golly, that's our job, even if we're messing it up. And the propaganda has really reached a stage of just not being believable. And that's very, very dangerous because for propaganda to work, it must present a coherent alternative reality that makes sense in order to replace what's really going on. And the U.S. is out there saying, well, you know, we're only in Syria to get ISIS and Al-Qaeda, even though for the last 4 years they were there to get Assad. And when the U.S. went in to Syria to get ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they kept missing ISIS and Al-Qaeda and bombing critical Syrian infrastructure. And we all see it now. The propaganda is just not believable, and that's why people are not believing it. Plus, the American people understand they are being propagandized by the government and the corporate media. The government even openly admitted, we've changed the law to make it legal to use propaganda on you. And propaganda only works if the population being propagandized doesn't know it's going on. So that's another problem that the U.S. is dealing with. Now, you remember back in 2013, there were some chemical attacks in Syria, which John Kerry and Barack Obama were out there saying, oh, this is definitely Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad did this. He just went on out and he gassed these Syrian people right in front of the UN chemical weapons inspectors on the day they arrived. Never came up with a reason why Assad would do something that stupid. The United Nations eventually concluded in their investigation it wasn't Bashar al-Assad who did it. It was somebody sending in these weapons to the U.S.-backed rebels to use on the Syrian people in order to blame on Bashar al-Assad. Well, now the representative of the Syrian Republic to the UN, Bashar al-Jafari, in a Sputnik interview, says that the evidence they've uncovered is that France smuggled in these chemical weapons to use on the Syrian people in order to blame on Bashar al-Assad. That's the essence of a false flag. Now, Vladimir Putin is getting ready to visit Turkey, according to a story in worldbulletin.net, supposedly to watch a football match between Russian and Turkish teams on August 31st. And Erdogan will also be at this friendship match. I have a sneaking feeling a lot more is going on than watching a football game. And it may be another indicator that Turkey is pivoting away from the U.S. following that botched coup d'etat and is going to be aligning with Russia. Meanwhile, the U.S. military is deploying Super Cobra attack helicopters to Libya, supposedly to fight against terrorism, but in actuality to keep the Libyan people from kicking out their U.S.-installed puppet rulers. This whole war agenda for the Middle East is in serious, serious trouble. The U.S. can't get traction. They're stuck in these quagmires in Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and Yemen. They can't get more than a foothold in Syria, and Iran is still, not even approachable at this point. They're in trouble. Now, the U.S. wants to go into Syria with a full-on military invasion. They tried that stunt with the wounded Syrian boy that they made world headlines. Oh, this poor Syrian child, the Syrian government almost killed him. Well, there's actually no evidence who was behind the attack or even that there was an attack at all. Most observers are saying this was just staged from beginning to end. And so now they're upping the propaganda because anonymous officials and intelligence experts are now saying, well, Bashar al-Assad didn't get rid of all of his chemical weapons from that Russian brokered deal. We have it on good authority because we just made up these phony documents that Assad has kept his chemical weapons, or at least some of them. So they're going to go back to that one, weapons of mass destruction. Because the motto of the United States government is, if at first you don't succeed, lie, lie again. So they're ramping up the booga booga. Assad has chemical weapons. He's going to throw them all over Detroit. What all else? And that means there's going to be some false flags out there. They're in a panic. The whole war agenda is falling apart. They do not have the support of the rank-and-file military. They do not have the support of the American people. They're in serious, serious trouble. Now, you remember not too long ago there was this big stink, over $400 million in cash, and literally it was cash, euros and Swiss francs, on pallets wrapped in plastic, delivered to Iran in an unmarked airplane, coincident with the release of 4 American hostages, and they denied up and down, oh, it wasn't a ransom. It was, something completely unrelated from years ago, and it's only a coincidence that Iran sent the people back. Then they had to turn around and say, yeah, the money was sent in to get these people released. Well, it turns out there's apparently a total of $1.3 billion in U.S. taxpayer funds has been delivered to Iran, and the Obama administration is now stonewalling an official inquiry into the matter. Congress is trying to find out why the administration sent $1.3 billion to Iran, and the Department of State, Department of the Treasury, and the Department of Justice are all saying none of your business. And they don't seem to understand that, yes, it is in fact the business of Congress to keep watch on the actions of the executive branch. So they're ramping up the propaganda against Iran again. The U.S. State Department is warning Iran wants to capture U.S. citizens. Stay out of Iran. Don't actually go and see what they're living like over there so we can fill your head full of lies about what a terrible place it is and how we have to invade to save those Iranian people from the evil, whatever it is they're going to come up with. So despite the utter failure of all these interventions so far, Iran is still in the target list. Even though Iran has kept all of its obligations under the P5+1 deal, the U.S. has not. The U.S. is justifying hanging on to Iran's assets by saying, well, they're being defiant. Yes, they're complying with the P5+1, but they're refusing our orders in other areas, and that allows us to not have to keep our obligations under the P5+1. Can you see the extent to which the U.S. government collectively are acting like a bunch of spoiled children with all of this nonsense? Now, Germany is considering bringing back compulsory military service in preparation for a crisis, such as situations in which Germany needs to defend NATO's external borders. In other words, the Führer, Merkel, is getting ready to militarize Germany. Meanwhile, Putin's going the other way. He's still out there in his role as global peacemaker, and he's pushing for talks between Palestine and Israel. But it may be too late because the State Department is also urging all U.S. citizens to leave Gaza as soon as possible, meaning that Israel is about to uncork on those poor Gazan people yet again. Some agent provocateur will fire a bottle rocket across the fence, and Israel will go in with all those modern weapons you bought for them. And they'll blow up schools and hospitals and children and teachers and all the rest of it, say, oh, there are terrorists in there. There's terrorists in the movie theater. There's terrorists in the schools and the hospitals. We've got to blow them all up. Now, up in Russia and Ukraine, the Normandy 4 have become the Normandy 3. There's a new scheduled discussion about the situation in Donbass that will be between Vladimir Putin Angela Merkel and Francois Hollande. They're going to meet in September in China within the framework of the G20 to discuss Ukraine, and Poroshenko is not being asked to participate. And that's because everybody understands he's trying to provoke some kind of a conflict or confrontation. Poroshenko has transferred 141 pieces of large-scale combat hardware to the army near Donbass. This is a complete violation of the previous agreements to pull back all armed forces. And Poroshenko is still out there screaming, Russia's going to attack, Russia's going to attack. He's talking about declaring martial law over all of Ukraine, which he needs to do because the Ukrainian people are fed up with him. They want him out. And he's going to bring back the draft and draft another 100,000 people into the Ukraine army. And as indications of how the people of Ukraine are fed up with it, the Ukrainian journalist, TV presenter, and head editor of the Gordon Boulevard newspaper, and since 2014, deputy of the Kiev City Council, Dmitry Gordon, on live TV said it would have been better if Yanukovych had stayed in power. The Maidan was a complete mistake. Well, it wasn't up to you, Gordon. It was engineered from outside by the United States government in order to deprive Ukraine of their own legitimate government and impose foreign puppet rule. That's what's going on out there. So, this path toward war is insane. Because I don't see how the United States can prevail against so many enemies with the current state of our military, and that means we're literally looking at a potential for a nuclear war, and even then, I do not see the United States being able to win. This is a no-win situation. Why are they still continuing? Got to take a break. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show. Coming up on the top of the hours, let's talk about the economy just a little bit. Foreign demand for U.S. Treasuries has pretty much dried up. And it kind of makes you wonder when you hear about all these banks that are dumping U.S. Treasuries, who's buying them? And the answer is more than likely the Federal Reserve is just cranking up the printing presses and typing numbers into the computers and buying the Treasuries back, using one form of worthless paper to buy back another form of worthless paper. Because there's a massive Treasury bond bubble. That's why everybody's trying to get rid of them. Now, people like to say that there's nothing backing the U.S. dollar. It's not backed by silver. It's not backed by gold. That's not entirely true. The U.S. dollar is backed by your future slave labor. Because what happens is the Treasury Department will print up a Treasury bond, and they'll send it over to the Federal Reserve, which then prints up a bunch of money and sends it back to the Treasury. And as Edison used to say, well, if the Treasury can print up a bond, why can't it print up its own dollars? Well, because the goal here is to make the bankers insanely rich. That's been the agenda for the last 100 years. How are Treasury bonds redeemed? Through taxation. Taking money from you for which nothing is returned to redeem those Treasury bonds. That's slavery. When you work and they take your work product away from you and give you nothing back for it, that is slavery. The problem is they have printed up so many Treasury bonds, there aren't enough living Americans, even with all the illegal immigrants and refugees, to ever make good on that paper. And everybody understands that. It's just another big scam. Because our entire economic system is based on a scam called private central banking. Now, down in Venezuela, and we need to be paying attention to what's going on down there because it's probably going to happen here. Venezuela's latest response to food shortages is to ban lines outside bakeries because it doesn't look good to have photos in the media about lines around the block to buy a loaf of bread. Apparently, Maduro is now out there saying that anybody who criticizes him or supports his removal from office will lose their employment. It's kind of a weak threat because most people don't have employment down there. Now, we're seeing a report coming out of governmentslaves.info. 300,000 Venezuelans have crossed the border into Colombia. So we have another U.S.-created refugee crisis now in South America. They have really messed up this planet. And all they can think of doing to deal with this is blow it all up so nobody remembers how we got here. Got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And Fox News is just running a story now that 4 Iranian vessels harassed a U.S. destroyer in the Straits of Hormuz. Really? Tell us why Iran would do something like that. Now, the harassment is because these Iranian boats came within 300 yards of the destroyer. Wow, 300 yards. That's 3 football fields. And if you look at a map of the international waters through the Straits of Hormuz, because everybody has territorial waters coming out from their shore, to that one little channel for international traffic, it's not that big. Ships pass close to each other all the time. This is just more propaganda to say, ooh, bad Iran, bad Iran, bad Iran, we have to go on in and invade the place. Because they're one of the few countries on earth that still refuse private central banking, and they must be brought to heel and reminded the whole purpose of the human race is to be the slaves of the private central bankers. Harumph, 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 harumph. Amazing. Folks, we cannot let this country go into a new world war. Setting aside the issue that war is wrong, it is immoral. War is a last resort for politicians who can't actually think of anything else to do. We're going to lose this one. We don't have the material, we don't have the manufacturing, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the money, and we certainly do not have the moral right to be waging war on the rest of the planet. And of course, all these war hawks and money junkies, they've already got their bunkers. They're the biggest preppers of all. Oh, yes, we're going to be prepping here. And by the way, over in Europe, Germany and the Czech Republics are telling their people, start stocking up on preserved food and water. They know something big is about to really blow all over this planet. And all these money junkies, they've got their bunkers. If they make a mistake and this thing goes nuclear, they'll just go on down for 6 months and come on out and say, wow, great, without all those other people around here. Gee, who am I going to get to tend my lawn now on my palace? Everybody's a multimillionaire. I can't get any of them to mow my lawn or fix my plumbing. Gee, maybe we should have thought this thing out a little bit more carefully ahead of time, huh? Now, getting on back to the economic news, France is all of a sudden discovering that allowing itself to be a stage for terror propaganda around the world has had a major cost. And that is that tourism to France has plummeted. Nobody wants to go there because they've been hearing in the corporate media about France is full of all these terrorists. They're running into crowds with trucks. They're out there with hatchets and machetes and machine guns. It's a hotbed of terrorism. And so people are staying away. Why go to Paris? You can tour the Louvre virtually over the internet. You can see the city in Google Earth when you have the 3D buildings enabled. Why bother with all that hassle? Tourism is way down because of all this warmongering. In the mail today, the regular postal mail, I actually got an ad from the Disney Cruise Lines about their upcoming Star Wars-themed cruise. Now, the idea that Claire and I would have anywhere near the kind of money to take a deepwater ocean cruise is laughable. I have no idea how I got on their mailing list. And if they're mailing to people like us, they are really, really desperate. Now, investors have so far pulled $109 billion from active equity funds in this year. $109 billion with a B. It's been a bad year for the hedge fund community and active managers in general. So why is the stock market still up when all that investment capital is fleeing, much of it into gold, I might add? Well, because it's being manipulated. It's just another illusion. The economy's fine. Look at the stock market. Yes, the streets are crumbling and the bridges are falling and the trains can't stay on the track, which is a big drag on everybody here. And, you know, we got 92 million people out of work. But look at the stock market. The economy's fine. Vote the incumbents back into office in November. Now, let's talk about Target, because Target wanted to be politically correct and allow the boys to use the girls' room and the girls to use the boys' room and all the rest of that. And this transgender stunt has cost them $10 billion. Now, some of that $10 billion we can chalk up to the declining economy. People don't have the money to go to Target or Walmart or wherever anymore. But if you look at Target's losses compared with other big box stores, they have been phenomenal. So obviously the transgender bathroom stunt did have an effect. People don't want to go to a store where their daughters and wives are going to go into the girls' room and find some guy in there saying, I'm really a girl. You know, I get to look at you. So Target is now going to have to spend $20 million installing one-person bathrooms in their stores. So it won't matter if you're a boy or girl or anything. It's one person to one restroom, which probably going to be a nice solution, as opposed to simply admitting that they were wrong and going back to boys go here, girls go here. All right, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are now rejoining us on our network here. We're talking about the economy. If you are my age, and if you are, you have my deepest sympathies. I'm having a lot of trouble on this upcoming birthday. It's making me cranky. But if you are my age and you remember an earlier America, Route 66 and everything, you probably remember the name Howard Johnson's. It was a restaurant chain that spanned the entire United States. They had a signature orange roof. Mel Brooks even made fun of them in his movie Blazing Saddles. They're that iconic. And like so many other iconic American establishments, they are hovering on the edge of extinction. They're down to just 2 restaurants. One of them is about to close. There's only going to be one Howard Johnson's restaurant left in the entire country. And I wasn't a big fan of Howard Johnson's. They were legendary for the slowness of their service. But still, it just shows how bad the economy is. And all restaurant chains are in serious trouble. People are not eating out. They don't have the money. It's cheaper to buy something at the store and cook it up at home. So, over in Fresno County, homeless camps are starting to spring up. We've been talking about the completely out of control rental prices, real estate prices in California. It's all being bubbled up again. They're repeating that whole real estate froth up of 2008, and there'll be another crash. And guess who they're going to stick with the losses on that one? But there's now a new homeless camp just outside Fresno's city limits, full of people saying they literally have nowhere else to go. And more across the country, we're seeing local governments deal with the homeless problem by simply shoving them into somebody else's town. They can't fix the problem because the problem comes down from that private central bank, and they are invulnerable until we get to the stage that earlier article talks about, and we have some guillotines out there. And remember, during the French Revolutions, long before Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette went to that guillotine, the bankers went. It's not a coincidence. The people of France knew who was looting them. They understood that the ultra-rich become ultra-rich by making everybody around them poor. remember, the big lie of capitalism is that everybody can be rich, and it is a lie. Because if we're all multimillionaires, who's going to take out the garbage? Who's going to repair the plumbing, the sewers? Who's going to pave the roads? Capitalism requires an imposed wealth differential through the use of taxation to keep people, the vast majority of people, so poor they are forced to accept those distasteful jobs on which society depends. Who's allowed to be rich is very often a political decision. If you're friends with the ruling elite, well, you get introduced to the little tax shelters and the little special accountants and everything. But capitalism cannot survive unless the vast majority of people are kept poor. That's the reality of it. Fascism operates exactly the same way. Let's talk about immigration and the refugee crisis. It's getting completely out of control. Over in Finland, there's a video that came on out that a fight broke out between migrants and locals near this migrant center in Forsa, Finland. And a 15-year-old kid was beaten rather badly with what is described as a hard object. They don't know what it was. It was a piece of pipe. But he was seriously, seriously injured. Now, here in Michigan, an illegal alien was arrested for public masturbation, as the police describe it, to completion at a shopping center in Pontiac, Michigan, and they politely refer to biological evidence recovered. See, this is the problem with open borders. It's only common sense that when people want to come to this country, that they be vetted, that they're not carrying contagious diseases, they're not carrying criminal records, that they will be a benefit to our country. This idea of totally open borders is absolute nonsense, because immigration is a filter. We're not getting the best of the people from those other countries. The people in those other countries who are doing well, who have skills, they're going to stay right where they are. They don't have a reason to leave. The ones who are leaving are the ones who can't make it in their home countries, and they're lured to Europe and the United States by all these promises of free stuff. We're going to give you free things. You're not going to have to work at all, so long as you vote Democrat. We have people who are fleeing prosecution in their home countries, just walking across the border. Remember when the U.S. opened up the borders to Cuban refugees? Castro went down to his prisons, emptied them out, put them on boats, and said 90 miles that way. And southern Florida has been dealing with the resulting epidemic of crime and drugs ever since. As we pointed out in hour number 1, back in the early 2000s, Hillary Clinton actually agreed. We need walls. We need strict immigration. She's only flip-flopped today because she's counting on the illegal immigrant vote to put her over the top into the White House. And that's why George Soros is funding all of these lawyers trying to tear down voter ID laws all across the country, even though the latest Gallup poll is showing 80% of Americans think there ought to be voter ID laws. Now, Germany's dealing with yet another problem because apparently thousands of Chechens are slipping through an unmanned border checkpost in Poland. Normally it's used by businessmen and tourists. It's really not protected and guarded, and they're just slipping on in. Another embarrassment for Angela Merkel, who, by the way, I have yet to see her take a single refugee into her own home. It's all you people have to put up with this nonsense. I'm too important to be so inconvenienced. All right, let's take a phone call here. Dave in Nevada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Yeah, I think it's about time some of these elite types start taking in some refugees into some of their estates and vineyards. And they have more than enough funds and resources to feed a village of them, for starters. But what I wanted to mention was that you were talking about the, what was the Howard Johnson's chains that are closing down?
Yes.
I kind of follow the restaurant industry because I'm in the kind of food and beverage industry, and there's this one website in LA and Los Angeles. It's called LA Eatery, and
I remember that one.
They chronicle all the different goings on with the restaurant business in Los Angeles, and this is endemic. There are a lot of old mainstays that have been around in Hollywood for about 40 to 50 years. They're all shutting down in Hollywood, almost all of them.
Oh, man.
And the new ones that are popping up, they're only lasting, if they're lucky, for about a year now. I'm reading, there's a huge list.
Yeah, we down at the bottom of the hill here, we had a fish taco place open up about 6 months ago. They just closed their doors. People just don't have the money to...
They're getting crushed.
I hope Barney's Beanery is still there on Sunset.
I don't remember. I haven't been in that part yet, but it's hard for them to just pay the bills and keep up with the overhead right now.
Well, I can certainly understand that. I mean, costs are going up. The customers are staying home. Our entire economy is being strangled by higher costs for everything. We were talking yesterday about how even adjusted for inflation, medical care costs have gone up 800% since 1960. This guy who was, there's been another scandal over a company acquiring a necessary medication and quadrupling the price for no other reason than the CEO wants a pay raise. And it really is completely out of control. And everybody is thinking about their own wallet and their own golden parachute, and nobody realizes that they're pushing this entire nation inevitably to a crash. And it's going to be ugly. And, of course, at that point, Soros is going to say, well, we'll just have a global private central bank, and that will fix everything, at which point I think we need to grab George Soros and give him a good thick coating of tar and feathers and run him out of town on a rail, because we all understand that's the private central banks that have destroyed every single country that they've parasitized. And a global version of the same thing isn't going to do any better.
No, it's not. But yeah, I know you were kind of involved with the Hollywood scene, so I kind of wanted to just give you an update on what's going on with the restaurants, because you mentioned the closing with all these places. So I just want to leave you with that.
Well, there were a lot of really cool and unique places in Hollywood. It's been a lot of years since I've been there, but I remember the last time I went, we were there for a family wedding, and the more unique and colorful places had all gone, and it was all turning into franchise outlets for the major corporations, which, you know, if it looks like any other city in America, then why bother dealing with the traffic to get down there?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening. It's starting to get really like the chains are just basically moving in now.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening down there. Anyways, thanks, Mike.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks an awful lot. One more comment on that same thing. When Claire and I first moved here to Hawaii all those years ago, there's a place called the Aloha Tower Marketplace, and I spent a lot of time there because I was working in the building right across the street on the film Final Fantasy. And so we were always doing lunch over there at the Aloha Tower Marketplace, and they had a lot of very unique places and a lot of these little kiosks selling locally made Hawaii ana. And then the Aloha Tower Marketplace was taken over by a new management company, which kicked out all the local craftsmen and turned over all the retail spaces to the large fashion chains, trying to be more like downtown Waikiki, which is you walk down Waikiki and it's, you know, Saks Fifth Avenue and Gucci and all the rest of that. And at that point, the same thing applies. If it looks just like any other city, why did you come all this way? And not too surprisingly, the business at the Aloha Tower Marketplace took a real drop because the cruise ship used to come into the terminal right next to the Aloha Tower Marketplace. People would come off to get that locally made Hawaiiana stuff, and it wasn't there anymore, so they'd just hop on the buses and go down to Waikiki. Very, very, very short-sighted. One of the things we need to remember is preserving our own local cultural identity is actually good for business. But we can't have cultural identity because the New World Order can't tolerate that. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we go to the phones here, I'm looking at my email, and somebody wrote in to tell me that, indeed, Barney's Beanery is still there on Sunset. And for anybody who spent any time working in Hollywood or around that area, it was an iconic place. And if you remember the movie Real Genius with Val Kilmer, where they go to celebrate after the breakthrough on the laser, where there's the pool tables and all the rest of that stuff, that was shot on location at Barney's Beanery, and it is an iconic place here. All right, let's grab a phone call from Fran in Washington State. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. You know, there's an item, and you were talking about local things. There is an item that, of course, the mainstream media doesn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole, and that's the Dakota Access Pipeline. And the Standing Rock Sioux and are protesting. Other tribes are arriving because they want to take this fracking oil from Canada through North Dakota, headed for like Illinois for a refinery. But they want to put this thing a half a mile or a mile upstream, upriver, up the Missouri River from the Standing Rock Reservation.
Yes.
And the possibility for millions of people, thousands of people, to have their only source of water disrupted by oil. I mean, now we're down to life or greed.
Well, unfortunately, in our country, greed trumps life. I mean, just look at the abuses of the medical-industrial complex. I understand there's about 4,000 Native Americans out there, and the state Homeland Security Director has responded by withdrawing all of the state-owned water tankers and everything to basically try and drive these people away from heat and thirst, which to me that represents an abridgment of their First Amendment right to peacefully protest and petition the government for
and treaty rights
and the treaty rights as well. And we know that these pipelines are built very cheaply. That they will leak is an absolute inevitability. I don't understand why they wouldn't reroute that pipe downstream from where these people are living. But then again, if it leaks anywhere, it's going to affect somebody downstream. And these petroleum distillates, prior to refinery, they're very toxic. Some of them are carcinogenic. And it really is a situation where you're right. Unfortunately, when it comes down to greed versus the health of the people, greed tends to win out. The whole fracking industry is of that mindset, where we have people who can literally light the water coming out of their taps on fire because of the fracking. The EPA is now, in fact, admitting that the recent surge of earthquakes down around Dallas is linked to the growth of fracking there. Of course, we've seen this in Oklahoma for quite some time. That quake in Washington, D.C. that actually damaged the Washington Monument was linked to fracking as well. It's a very, very dangerous thing to do. But when you're a government that is absolutely desperate for money, you will basically go along with these things. And to heck with what the people want. We're seeing that not just with fracking, but with handling of nuclear waste. It's all expedient, and what's good for the general public just isn't in the calculations anymore.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Michael, since the mainstream media doesn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, I feel it would be in your bailiwick to keep us apprised of the situation.
Well, it had been in my talking points. I skipped on down to it, when your call came on in, but it was on the talking points to mention today.
Oh, cool. Well, have a great day, and we will be listening to you. You've turned into an obsession. Okay.
Thank you, I think.
Michael.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Getting on back to Europe, here comes the Oxit. Now, the Austrian elections, they're coming up on the second runoff, and the Eurosceptic, the exit party, is surging ahead. And we'll have more about that when we come back from these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the Auxit. Austria is now making noises about leaving the European Union, and it's having an impact on the second runoff vote, which will take place in October. And right now, the candidate that is arguing for an exit is ahead. They actually had a first runoff vote, but the results were invalidated due to the massive election fraud that was taking place, which is silly because according to President Obama, election fraud is just a conspiracy theory. It just never, ever happens. Now, article coming out of Sputnik News, after the Brexit, it's hard to find anyone within Europe who supports the European Union. Of course, Jean-Claude Juncker believes in it because he's in charge of it. The European Central Bank supports the EU because they're making huge amounts of money off of it. All of George Soros hired New World Order activists are fully supporting the European Union as a stepping stone to one planet, one government, one throne, one global private central bank to hold all of humanity in debt slavery until the sun swallows the earth. But for everybody else, it's been a raw deal. It's been a raw deal. Now, speaking of raw deal, these poor people down there in Louisiana, there is another hurricane heading on in. Hurricane Hermione. They're expecting 7 inches of rain, maybe more than that. We've had a lot of rain here in Hawaii today, too. We were under a flash flood watch earlier today. 100-mile-an-hour winds next Wednesday. These poor people. And I would like to hope that FEMA reacts a little more quickly than it did back during Hurricane Katrina. But remember, one of the mayors of one of the most badly flooded towns in Louisiana is now suing the state and federal government because apparently a concrete barrier built down the middle of a nearby highway is what prevented the water from draining away, resulting in the drowning of his town. And apparently over the last 2 years, he'd been saying, this is a problem, this is a problem. Now we're getting a very troubling report. This was an entry on a Facebook page. Down there in Louisiana, the Red Cross has basically taken over all the shelters and all the aid stations for all those people who've lost their homes. And they're apparently refusing donations from ordinary citizens. And they're only handing out supplies that are coming in from contracted providers. They're only using volunteers from contracted providers. Somebody's making a lot of money off of all of this. And the person who posted this said they're never going to donate to the Red Cross again. They're never going to volunteer for the Red Cross again. And the Red Cross has been hit by scandals in the past. Now, I'm a great believer in grassroots charity, grassroots assistance, people helping people, not letting organizations corporatize it and exploit it. And here we have the Red Cross actually saying, no, you ordinary people, you're not allowed to donate food or clothes or anything. You're not allowed to volunteer. We're only accepting from our contracted for providers who are making money off of this deal. That's what's going on. Now, there's a lot of troubles going around the world in general. They've had this horrible earthquake in Italy, 6.2 magnitude in a part of Italy where they don't actually have a good seismic standard for building because they haven't really had quakes in this area before. I wonder if they're doing fracking there. But they had a 6.2 magnitude quake, and it's been followed by a large number of aftershocks. So far, 170 people are confirmed dead, and the quake wiped out not just the main town you're seeing on the news, but apparently 16 other towns have suffered significant damage. They're still trying to dig that out. And they're basically saying some of these towns are, for all intents and purposes, gone. There's nothing left to rebuild with. It's just nothing but rubble. It's gone. That's a horrible, horrible situation. And I remember earthquakes from when I lived in Southern California. And Claire and I, we went through the Northridge quake. That was the biggest one we went through. And we had a quake kit. We pulled through. Now we call it a hurricane kit, but it's basically the same thing. There's been another major quake. This one's 6.8 in Myanmar that has killed 3 people that they know of. It's slow getting news out of that part of the world. And apparently damaged nearly 100 ancient Buddhist pagodas in Bagan, which is a major tourist site. So there's a whole lot of shaking going on around the world. Maybe it's planet Earth just saying, get off me. Now, over at Fox News, as you know, allegations and lawsuits regarding sexual harassment have become the norm over there. And Fox News host Andrea Tantaros is the latest of at least 20 women who have accused ex-Fox News CEO Roger Ailes of sexual harassment. Tantaros is now also suing for harassment she suffered from guests and other men at the network, including Bill O'Reilly. Now, my first instinct would be to say, oh, imagine my surprise, we know what Bill O'Reilly is. But. We know from the feminist manifesto of the 1990s that false allegations of rape were considered a form of empowerment. And when we know that Fox News, for a network that talks about diversity, they do seem to have a lot of hot blonde ladies as their talking heads. And I think we have to say, even knowing Bill O'Reilly, how much of this is real and how much of this is simple grandstanding, using the threat of public embarrassment to force an out-of-court settlement? It's a very, very murky area, and I say this because many, many years ago, I knew a woman very well who used accusations of sexual harassment to get rid of men whose jobs she coveted. And I know Hillary is out there saying that any victim of sexual harassment has a right to be believed, except, of course, for that white trailer trash that was accusing Bill Clinton of sexual harassment. But I think we need to go back to the original principles. There's got to be some proof beyond he said, she said. Now, we're not talking about rape. We're talking about sexual harassment. And in the case of Bill O'Reilly, apparently he made a comment about taking this lady out to someplace outside Fox News where he could see her wild side. Now, that's a pretty tame and colorless statement. And this whole thing about harassment and everything, it's always a matter of fashion. It's a matter of fashion. I remember in the 1980s when I was working in Europe. Over there, back then, before we sent them a bunch of feminist lawyers, women in the office, single women in the office, expected the single men to flirt with them. If you weren't telling them they were beautiful, they were cute, if you weren't giving them a little pinch, your paperwork would disappear. Or at the very least be at the bottom of the stack on the to-do list. So it's always a matter of fashion. Now, you're going to love this one, especially if you've worked in education, you've been a teacher. After all these years and all this damage, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation chief has admitted that, the Common Core isn't really working out all that well. And, it was badly implemented. We had unrealistic approaches to some of these things. And, but we meant well. That's their excuse. And it should be a reminder, one more time, that having a lot of money doesn't necessarily make you smart, it just makes you rich. And when you couple that with a tendency to want to meddle in the lives of others with your money, bad things will happen. Remember, the Gates Foundation got implicated in these mass sterilization efforts where they were giving out free typhus vaccines in Africa. And then suspicious doctors analyzed what was in the bottles, and they found they contained chemicals that would permanently sterilize women so they couldn't have kids. And Bill Gates, not to the same extent, but he's showing the same tendency as George Soros. Having all that money gives him a right to treat planet Earth and all of the human race as his own personal toys to play around with. Let's try this. Let's do that. Oh, let's say, I'm rich. I'm allowed to be a god incarnate. Now, as I mentioned to that phone call where we were talking about the protest over the pipeline, the EPA, for the first time, has declared that there is a significant possibility that disposal wells for fracking are the cause of a recent surge of small earthquakes in the Dallas area. And this is a problem because the Texas state regulators have been taking the industry position, no, there's absolutely not. It's only a coincidence that when we start pumping liquids into the ground that the ground starts getting unstable. It's just a coincidence. And the Texas Railroad Commission, which for some reason has regulatory authority over oil and gas drilling, has been reluctant to acknowledge that there's a connection, even though in other places like Oklahoma, we have seen these fracking wells go in, and all of a sudden areas with no previous history of seismicity start having large numbers of minor earthquakes. This is very, very dangerous, and we know that there's a mechanism at work here. Think about the pedal on the bottom of your hairstylist's chair. They just step on the pedal and your entire weight moves up. Hydraulics. Very, very simple. We know that there's a connection between pumping fluids into ground and earthquakes because many, many years ago out at the 29 Palms military facility in Southern California, they decided to get rid of some contaminated toxic wastewater by just pumping it into a nearby earthquake fault under pressure. And they started doing that, and all of a sudden there was a swarm of quakes, and they stopped the pumping, and the quakes went away. Well, obviously, if you've got cracks in the ground, fault lines, and the liquid gets in there under pressure, it's not only going to push the walls of the fault apart, it's going to act as a lubricant. But as that other caller said, when it comes down to a choice between greed and the health of the people, greed is going to win, because that is the essence of a fascist economic dictatorship. What makes money is good. What doesn't make money, ooh, that's bad. Now, the global warming debate is heating up one more time. Bill Nye, the not really very science guy, in my mind, was basically being interviewed on CNN, towing the line saying that the floods in Louisiana were caused by global warming, forgetting that Louisiana has had a very long history of flood activity. Why do you think they built those levees along the Mississippi River? Louisiana has been subject to periodic repeated flooding for hundreds of years. But according to Bill Nye, it's human-caused global warming. And when he was basically challenged on that, he dodged the issue and instead decided to take CNN to task for having a meteorologist who's a global warming denier. He denies human-caused global warming. You shouldn't have him on the air. You should fire him right away. So it's getting a little intense out there. Remember when Al Gore tried to blame the California wildfires on global warming? And then all of a sudden they caught and arrested an arsonist who'd set at least 17 of the fires? And by the way, it is snowing in Colorado. Pictures are all over social media, all around Pikes Peak. It is starting to snow. This is still August. They're getting snow up in Canada. Normally, August up in that part of Canada is hot and muggy. They're getting snow. They're getting a winter storm warning up in Alaska. And remember, during the summer, Alaska is actually a very, very warm place because they get sunlight. Depending upon where you are in Alaska, from anywhere between 18 and 20 hours a day, the sun is up. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Jeff in New York. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Calling you from the great city of Saratoga Springs, New York.
Okay.
I love listening to you. I've been a long-time listener. Listen, I had an idea and point and concept for these electronic voting machines, and yesterday in particular you were talking about them. You know, the one thing I believe that they could incorporate in the machines that would make it almost fail-safe to fraud, why not post a barcode on the primary ballot, whether it's a write-in or an electronic, and have a tear-off matching barcode where you can download an app, scan the barcode, and it will confirm your vote being placed properly. And then you have an opportunity to call and contest the vote, whether it was actually counted as you wanted it to or not.
Okay, there's a problem with that. Okay, you could log into the app and it will confirm the vote that you actually made, but that system doesn't address whether or not the totals were changed after the vote was confirmed. There's a hole in there.
Absolutely. Yep, you're right, there is.
Yeah, and
one thing it would do is it would confirm your vote was being counted. Of course, that's as far as you can go. But like you say, I mean, it's down hit the nail on the head. The ones who count the votes are in charge of who gets voted in.
Yeah, it's absolutely right here. We need to get all electronic systems out of the election. We don't need to have the results in real time. Let's take 2-3 days to count the election and make sure it's done honestly. We need paper ballots. We need the ballots counted by humans in full view of everybody, like they used to do the Iowa caucuses. And then the results are posted for everybody to see it. And then you should be able to basically look and trace your precinct's totals all the way up the chain to the final result. So that if any of those totals are changed, the people living in that precinct are going to say, hey, there's been a change. But we have to get those electronic machines out because there's always a way to rig them. They're designed that way. Jeff, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take a phone call here. Dirk in Nevada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. You got a great show. I listen every day. You know, I was talking to my buddy, and my understanding, you have a lot of special ops guys in Aleppo that are stuck with these terrorists with Russian guys surrounding them. Is that correct? And, you know, it looks to me like those people are a liability to Hillary and the neocons. I mean, they can't let those Americans out of there, can they? And they're looking for an excuse. They need something to kick off this aggression towards Russia. They have to find some way to demonize Russia, the way I see it. So I just thought I'd bring that up and get your thoughts on that.
Well, the special forces that are up in Aleppo are a problem, and I think both Assad and Putin are smart enough not to put them in harm's way. I don't know that they're a liability for Hillary Clinton or for anybody else because they just know their orders to go on in and do X, Y, Z. Now that the U.S. has basically declared a no-fly zone and a beachhead on Syria, it is now sort of considered okay for U.S. boots to be on the ground in Syria, and the fact that these guys were there without it being admitted to is now kind of moot. It's no longer an operative concept. But the U.S. is really thrashing around trying to get this war going. I mean, a Cold War is good for the military-industrial complex. It's good to maintain control over the American people. But this does seem to be heading to a real hot war. And the U.S. can't win that. Even if it goes nuclear, they can't win it. And nobody, apparently in any position of authority, is able to look up from their own immediate agenda to look around and say, we're on the verge of a disaster. for the United States. We're economically fragile. We've lost the respect of the rest of the world. If we were to get into this war and have a major loss on top of it, basically the U.S. would be reduced to a third world nation.
Right. You know what? I just wanted to bring up one more thing real quick. I was looking around on a search engine and trying to find some information on Assange's last bundle of leaks, and just every search engine hit, when you go to that site, there's some kind of warning that your computer might be under attack, or it's funny to see all the damage control that they're doing out there.
Oh yeah.
People looking at.
Yeah. Yahoo. If you search my website and you click on it, you go to this page saying this is not an authorized link by Yahoo, and going to this site will be very, very risky. So yeah, they're not pulling any punches trying to find some way to discourage ordinary people from going to the independent media, because they know they're losing the war for the minds of America. Dirk, we're going to let you go. We got to take a break for top of the hour station identification. We got another caller waiting on the line when we come back for hour number 3. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go right back to the phones here. Alex in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I called today to tell you that I work in the community in different areas. And it seemed like today that, there was a person registering voters where my event was today.
Yes.
And I noticed there were Hispanics. There was a gentleman from Ecuador and a gentleman from Honduras, and they both kind of mentioned that they were voting for Trump. One of the guys said, I know that there's 2 people running, and I know one of them's a liar, and I'm not voting for her. And these are people that are Hispanic. Another guy pulled up on a bicycle. He's basically homeless, and he said he's voting Republican. And it's like, I don't know. When I see that, it's like, there's 3 people right there outspoken saying what they're going to do.
Well, we mentioned the
what
other.
do you think?
Well, we mentioned the other day the Hispanics, Latinos, whatever name you want to put on them, who have come to this nation through the legal channels. They're tired of being lumped in with the illegal immigrants. They see the illegal immigrants as actually harming all that they've accomplished in the United States, the building of community, the building of businesses. The illegals are harming their image. And, of course, the illegals represent competition for jobs in an already overstressed economy. So the Latinos who are here legally are not automatically on the side of the illegal immigrants, and that's a serious miscalculation on Hillary's part.
Yeah, and I think that the press is very, we know that they're liars, but I think they're very manipulative, and I think that there could be a backlash from the Hispanic community. I hope it shows up in the voting booth where they say, no, you're not going to tell us who we're going to vote for. And I will tell you this. I have been a registered Democrat my whole life. I recently changed over to the Green Party, and I had a lady call me the other day doing a poll, and she asked me who I was voting for, if it was just Hillary and just Trump. And I said, I'll vote for Donald Trump. And I could tell that she took like a deep breath when I told her that, because I know that I'm on the registration for being a Democrat. But I kind of felt good telling her that. But that's what I would do. But they're trying to manipulate the polls by asking you questions like that, like if it's only those 2, which one are you voting for? They keep calling me, and I can tell that they're kind of trying to fix the numbers.
Hello? Okay.
Hello?
Okay, you dropped out there for a second. I thought we were going to lose our Skype connection again. Well, first of all, the job of the corporate media is to manipulate the public. That's what they get paid the millions of dollars to do, is to convince you to want what the government wants you to want, what the politicians want you to want, what the car salesmen want you to want. That's their job. That's what they get paid for, manipulating public opinion. And yes, they are trying to do push polling to generate numbers that indicate Hillary is winning. And now that everybody is sort of aware how the manipulations are being done, they oversampled Democrats. That's probably why you got the call. Is they're calling twice as many Democrats as Republicans in order to get numbers that favor Hillary Clinton, even though the number of registered Republicans and Democrats in this country are pretty much equal at 29% of the population each. And so right. I'm sure that's why she took the deep breath. It would suggest to me that maybe she'd been hearing that same thing all day long. She's calling Democrats to get up the tally for Hillary, and she's hearing all these Democrats saying, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. One thing I tell people, I do work in the community, as I was saying, I let them know, I say there could be an uprising amongst the people, and you need to tell any of your friends who are with the military or the police that they need to restrain from acts of violence towards the population. We need to have solidarity, and our political party should not affect how our government treats its people. We need respect, and we don't need a government that's going to hit us in the head with billy clubs, put mustard gas or whatever that is that they spray on crowds to get rid of
pepper spray.
People that are, pepper spray. Yeah, we need to let everyone know that it needs to be peaceful, and we cannot allow our police or our military to conduct acts of violence on its citizens.
Absolutely agree.
We need to be serious, and any police officer, any person in the military that we know, we need to talk to them and let them know this is very serious. There is proof, or there are those that believe that the government is expecting another uprising, and I think that they will hit us with violence if they need to. We need to let them know that's unacceptable.
Well, I'm absolutely in agreement. Unfortunately, as has been demonstrated to us by no less a personage than FBI Director James Comey and U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, the government is actually there to enforce the will of whatever ruling party has power at that moment. When it's a Democratic administration in Congress, they're going to be on the side of the Democrats and pound on the GOPers. When a Republican is in power and in Congress, the government will side with them. And it is horribly partisan. It's not supposed to be, but that's the reality that we're dealing with. Our government has become totally corrupted from top to bottom. And I am certainly hoping that if we can get Donald Trump into the White House, and if we can do a scrub out of Congress and give Donald Trump a Congress that will work with him, we can start rolling back a lot of this corrupting influence, first and foremost by shutting down these American drug lords and their money laundering machine, and basically cut off that source of corruption within our government, just like they did after prohibition was repealed. And we're back there.
One more thing. I heard Donald Trump before he announced his campaign for presidency. The other day, I heard him on a rerun on YouTube. He was talking how our government needs to allow its people to invest in real estate. He was saying if someone has the credit and the down payment to invest in a second home or a piece of real estate, our government should let them, but the banks are not loaning money. And I want to tell Donald Trump he needs to talk more like that, because how they're going to take our retirement pensions from us and things like that, I think it would be more difficult for them to take property from us. And I think a lot of people are in the same position I'm in. I want to go buy a second home. I want to buy a piece of property, but the banks are jerks. I mean,
what's going on? What's going on here? The banks understand that we're entering into a repeat of what led to the crash of 2008. Real estate is being frothed up. It's being flipped left and right. And the banks are trying to limit their exposure to an eventual crash. So it's actually a prudent business decision on their part. Anyway, listen, I need to take a moment here. I need to take a moment here. Give me a second. And do a shout out to our on-air affiliates or have rejoined our network now. We're taking phone calls and we're talking about the economy. Basically, Donald Trump needs to go to the head of the Hydra or the heart of the Hydra, and it all goes back to that private central bank, which by design creates more debt than money with which to pay that debt until the debt swamps the system. And that's where we are right now. The debt is completely unsustainable. And everybody's solution is let's find a way to take more money away from the American people so we can keep the bankers happy. And we, the American people, need to stand up and say, we don't care if the bankers are happy or not. We're not happy, and you're going to have to deal with us now.
That's right. Hey, Michael, I wanted to say one thing.
Yes.
When the bank told me I did not qualify to buy a second home that was only $60,000, and I thank God that I was in the position where I feel like I could pay for it, the mortgage guy told me, he said, you know what? What it is if the economy goes belly up again, that's the first loan you won't pay. And you know what my response to that was? Is I can go buy a $60,000 Mustang in 10 minutes. So that's BS. Yeah,
it is. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go. I got another caller waiting on the line, so thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to talk to Jim in Kansas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I saw the movie War Dogs last night, and I really enjoyed it. You think there's a connection between those trillions that are missing from the Pentagon and those kids in Miami that had that scam going?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen the movie War Dogs. But a lot of people are talking about that $6 trillion that has vanished from the Pentagon, and some are saying it's just sloppy bookkeeping. Others are simply saying that the system is being looted and strip mined by everybody along the line, the officers, the corporations, the military-industrial complex. Others have suggested that maybe this money was siphoned off for some kind of a black project for the ultimate weapon that will allow the U.S. to win World War III. Maybe the U.S. is building their own Death Star or something. I think it's probably a combination of all three. But the Pentagon has never really been very good at accounting for where all the money goes. From the Pentagon's point of view, the State Department's point of view, money is just something that gets poured over all the problem areas of the world to make the problems go away. And I remember when Michael Moore came on out with his Fahrenheit 9/11, and I disagreed with his attempt to blame Saudi Arabia for it, but they were talking about what was going on over in Iraq and how this was all being sold. We're going to have a wonderful opportunity, and there was this guy who was out there, was pitching for American businesses to go into Iraq and take over from the Iraqi business and saying, don't worry, there's plenty of money, we're going to be pouring money all over this stuff to make it happen. And usually keeping track of that stuff becomes very difficult, especially if it's going someplace that really cannot be publicly acknowledged, and that is probably a big part of what's going on as well.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. Now, before we get back to the news here, I want to go back to that phone call we had in the last hour talking about election fraud. Contrary, I mean, I hate to speak back to the President of the United States of America, but election fraud isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a part of American history. And it's been going on a long time, and sometimes Americans have to fight back like they did in Athens, Tennessee. But it is a reality. It's not a conspiracy theory, and it's epidemic in this country right now. So what we would really need is, first of all, get rid of all the electronic machines. If we are not able to verify what the software is doing inside or what's on that memory card ahead of time, then they have to be gotten rid of. Maybe I should go long on sledgehammers at this point. What we need, and again, there's no law that says that we have to have the results of an election by the next morning. I mean, certainly look at that debacle in Florida in 2000, how long it was before the Supreme Court finally said, okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, George Bush gets it. But what we need is to go back to paper ballots at every precinct, and when the voting is over, the ballots are counted by hand by human beings in full view of everybody. And those totals are then posted where everybody can write them down. And then following the election, we have published in the newspapers, so it can't be rigged with by checking your IP and saying, oh, we need to tell this person the election results were this. Published in the newspapers. In all the city newspapers, they publish all the totals for all the precincts. And then in the statewide newspapers, they take all of those local ones and they come up with a state total that everybody can follow step by step by step. And then finally, the state totals are published in the national newspapers. And that means that every single American citizen can go from the total in their precinct and follow it all the way up to the final totals at the national level. And if they see a discrepancy, they can go public on it. That will guarantee the honesty, accuracy, and fairness of the election. Fully open, transparent, can be literally audited by every single voter out there. That's what we need. We absolutely do need a system like that. Alrighty, getting on back to the news here. The attack dogs are really going after Donald Trump again. And now we've got the Congressional Black Caucus is out there saying that Donald Trump is courting white supremacist voters. He's getting the KKK on his side. They're really out there desperate. CNN is trying to level the playing field over Hillary's health issues by saying, well, we think Donald Trump's health may not be very good. They're both sickos, and that kind of balances it all out. So really, we shouldn't pay attention to Hillary's health issues because we're convinced that Donald Trump is hiding a serious illness as well. And, of course, there's no proof for any of it. They're just out there trying to find some way to negate all this bad stuff that's coming on out about Hillary Clinton and her health. And they're grasping at straws. They really are. Now then, as we mentioned earlier in the day, Turkey has crossed over into Syria, ostensibly to be attacking ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Syria is saying, no, you shouldn't be doing that. And apparently we're now getting reports that Turkey is not, in fact, targeting ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They're targeting the Kurds. They're going after Syria's Kurdish population. Now, this is a major problem for the United States because the United States is still following this agenda of creating a new Kurdistan out of pieces carved out of Syria, Turkey, and Iraq. And now Turkey is going after the Kurds as well. Iraq has taken a different approach. They're starting to talk to them and say, look, we can all live together. We can share the oil revenues. We can all get along here. Now, Facebook is starting to classify their users as liberal, moderate, or conservative. For whatever reason, we do not know. Probably at this point, they need a category for anarchist. Because after 22 going on 23 years of close study of the American political system, studying the Republicans and the Democrats, I have to admit, anarchy is looking very attractive right now compared to what we have here. So let's get on back to human-caused global warming. Interesting little story that came on out. This was over in the Daily Mail. And it sounds like a real minor story, but basically the scientists have discovered little air bubbles trapped in rock 800 million years ago. That's a long time. And they discovered by analyzing these air bubbles that oxygen levels spiked on Earth much earlier than previously thought. Now, for anybody not studying the evolution of our atmosphere and our oceans, into what we enjoy today as a comfortable place to be alive, they're going to say, so what? But it points out that there is a vast amount of information that is not really known about how climate has been changing on Earth. And yet the climatologists are out there saying we absolutely can guarantee that if we do X and Y and you pay a carbon tax that we can stop all climate change. And that's ridiculous. They can't. It's a promise they cannot possibly keep. Climate is supposed to change. Climate has always changed. It always will, even after humans are gone. This idea that they can halt climate change and lock it into some arbitrary definition of the perfect environment, that's what's artificial. That's what's the fraud, the hoax. It can't be done, and it shouldn't be done. Every time they tinker with some part of nature, whether it's GMO or vaccines, they cause more harm than good. Got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going to talk about computers for a little bit. And Hillary's Tantrum Squad is still running all over the place, attacking servers critical of her. It's pretty much constant on my server now. A couple of other websites like Jim Stone, for example, completely destroyed. Has to rebuild from scratch. Now, apparently, ransomware has gone so completely out of control. The Bournemouth University in England has been hit 21 times by ransomware in the last year. They even have their own cybersecurity center. 28 national health system trusts have been hit. And the ransomware people apparently are targeting institutions that are under serious time constraints. They must get their data back quickly or serious harm will result. They're targeting hospitals, knowing that the hospitals will pay the ransom because to not have access to their computerized patient records risks human life. And these ransomware authors don't care. They don't care. It makes money. It's good. And, of course, the U.S. government doesn't see this as a problem. Even when people's lives are at stake, we can't be bothered. The official recommendation from the FBI is if you get hit by ransomware, pay the ransom. They can't or won't do anything about it. Which raises the interesting possibility that, like the civil forfeiture laws, the ransomware is just another system by the U.S. government to loot and plunder its own population in its desperate bid to keep that Ponzi scheme central bank running just a little bit longer. When you look at the amount of corruption within the U.S. government, does it really sound all that outlandish? Remember, Kaspersky identified the hacker group, Equation Group, as being part of the NSA. They're not out there finding the cyber criminals. They are the cyber criminals. Edward Snowden was saying, they're stealing stuff from ordinary law-abiding citizens. They grab naked pictures of your significant other to enjoy in the privacy of their own home. And it's all for free. That data center in Utah may be the world's largest collection of amateur porn. Now, the other day I was talking about how our IT technology has grown beyond our ability to really maintain it because it's become bloated, corporatized. These days, software systems are put together not by actually writing code from the ground up, but by buying existing systems and trying to fit them together to get the end result as quickly as possible. That was what was behind the disaster of the Obamacare website. Huge amounts of money. Just a huge amount of money went to this company, and all they did was they went out and bought bits and pieces of other people's software and glued them together for the Obamacare website, and it did not work. The latest embarrassment is that Google has broken their own cloud system by doing 2 updates at once. Now, if Google can't manage its own systems, then we know our technology has become decadent. And I've been commenting on this for a while, especially as they talk about the Internet of Things. Everything will have a computer chip. Why? Computers are great for certain things. Why do I have to have a computer in everything? I used to have a computerized coffee maker. And I got tired of those because after 6 months, some little tiny inexpensive piece like the little gold-plated basket would develop a tear, and you can't buy just the basket. You go to the store and they say, well, we've got the new improved model here. So I don't need the little clock and the automatic computerized coffee making stuff. Now I've got an old-fashioned low-tech coffee press. That works just fine. Didn't cost anywhere near as much. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about our technology becoming decadent, the Internet of Things, where everything has to have a computer chip, and yet every time they put another computer chip into something else, like a car, immediately we discover it can be interfered with from outside. It can be hacked to your harm. So I use a lot of computers. I spent my life with computers. There are certain things I have to have computers for. But if something doesn't need to have a computer chip in it, I would rather it did not. Simple is better. Simple and elegant is better. All right, we're going to take a phone call. John in Barbados, aloha. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yes, firstly, I want to comment about the electronic voting machines.
Okay.
Now, if we could make them honest, they're a good thing. How do we make them honest? Well, we put printers on every one, and it prints out 2 copies of your vote. One copy is already franked with a postage that is an address to a central counting station where the representatives, say, of Hillary and Donald, sit overseeing the count of those paper ballots that are printed from the machines. The other one you hand to the voter, and he can physically check that the one that's sent by the mail, that's already, printed out ready for the mail, matches what he has in his hand, which would stop them printing 2 different votes. And then, unless those votes that are counted manually and overseen by the representatives of each campaign meet what the electronic machine says, then we take the actual physical count as the result, not the electronic machine. But that would still allow the electronic machines to indicate a victor, but it better be honest.
Well, see, knowing what we know about hackers and ransomware and malware and NSA and this, at this point, computers can't be trusted. They absolutely cannot. And I think the perfect system is to get rid of all these electronic machines and go back to something that's simple and elegant and works. And I think my idea of just, at every precinct, it's all done on paper ballots. And when the voting is over, the ballots are counted by humans in full view of all the voters and representatives of the various parties and candidates. And that total is then posted for everybody to see and write down. And then the newspapers list all of the results from all the precincts. The state newspapers tally them all together and provide a state total. The national newspapers have the state totals from all the states all the way up to the final result, so that every single voter in America can go and validate that the total they know to be accurate from their precinct remained unchanged all the way up to the very top of the chain. Because that gives us literally 100 million people looking over the shoulder of those who run these elections. I think it's a really, really good and simple, straightforward system. I don't think these computers can be trusted. Even before computers, they were rigging these things. Remember the old manual voting machines where you'd pull a lever? And then we find out, if you remember the book Vote Scam by the Collier brothers, The vote riggers were simply in there shaving the teeth off of the gears so they wouldn't register.
Well, what I see is even with paper ballots, the problem is dead people vote. They use early voting, postal ballots, which can be rigged. You know, every system has its faults.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that. I mean, we have to have voter ID laws, and we have to have a registration system that checks for dead people. And by the way, there's a video on WhatReallyHappened.com about how literally out in California, hundreds and hundreds of people who have been dead for years have been voting in all these elections ever since. So it is completely out of control. And, we need a solid national ID just for elections so that the illegals are not allowed to vote. And you have to show that ID to vote so that people can't vote multiple times. And I'll tell you what would back it up. And this is in the blueprint for the new America. And that is if any election fraud is detected at all, that candidate is removed from that race and banned from holding public office ever again. Because if a candidate cannot keep his own or her own staff in compliance with the law, then by default, they're incapable of actually doing the job of whatever office they're running for. We need to basically have a zero tolerance policy and laws to back it up. The problem we have here in the United States of America is every time election fraud is discovered, nothing happens to the people who were doing the fraud. You know, they get embarrassed in the newspapers at worst. That's it. If you steal an election, you're in less trouble than if you're caught jaywalking.
Unfortunately, you are correct, Michael. Now, the last thing I want to mention is this invasion of Syria by Turkey and Turkey's special forces.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that maybe there is not this meeting of minds so much between Putin and Erdogan. Who knows?
Well, we understand that Turkey is actually going after the Syrian Kurds rather than ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Erdogan is definitely a loose cannon on deck here. And Putin, of course, is trying to take advantage of the situation to get Turkey to pivot to Russia and away from the U.S. But I'm sure Putin doesn't view Erdogan as a reliable ally.
And so it certainly doesn't. And I've been considering what I was saying yesterday about this problem with Poroshenko and Ukraine. And it's looking even more dodgy today than it was yesterday. So, and I don't know where it's going, but I think it's going in one direction, and that's war between America and Russia.
And China. And
probably China. And Iran, probably.
And we're going to lose this. We're going to lose this one. After 13 years of sticking our nose where it doesn't belong, the United States military is worn out. The stockpiles are drawn down. The weapons themselves, the warplanes and the tanks and everything, they're worn out. They're not designed to have a long lifespan because of how short their lifespan is in actual combat. And so we're ill-equipped to be taking on a major world power, let alone 2 or 3. And even if it goes nuclear, the U.S. is going to lose this one. When you look at the weapons that are coming on out from our military-industrial complex, they're still thinking like the last Cold War. They can make overpriced junk and get away with it because it's never actually going to be used, and then when it gets used, it falls apart. We went through that same thing in World War I when they pulled that stunt with the Lusitania to get the U.S. in, and the early part of the U.S. involvement in World War I was a disaster, because the defense contractors all the way back then had been producing this very costly junk. That's one of the things that made Harry Truman very popular among the American people, because he was going around to all these military contractors who were getting all this tax money and producing junk or nothing at all and saying, look, if you're not producing the product you promised, you're not going to get your money. And Truman just whipped these defense contractors into shape to where they started finally producing something that they could actually take into combat. I mean, my grandfather on my mother's side was one of the first Americans to go into service in Europe as part of the Yankee division, and he was issued a gas mask provided by the lowest bidder that failed the first time that he tried to use it, and he lost one of his lungs to mustard gas.
Well, unfortunately, that seems to be the modus operandi of the military-industrial complex. You only got to look at the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier.
Well,
that's nonsense.
There's a new report out saying that the M1 Abrams tank is really good at defeating countries that are using 1950s leftovers, but against the main battle tanks of the modern powers, it's actually inferior. Okay.
Well, I've looked at these things quite. I was in the military for a long time, so I've looked at these things quite intensively. And for example, the Russian T-90 now, which they've supplied to Syria, it's been hit by TOW missiles, and it just shakes itself and carries on.
Yes.
This is real military equipment, and it's serious military equipment, and I don't think America has got a match for it.
They may not. I mean, the TOW missiles basically use a shaped charge warhead, and they rely on the Monroe effect to punch through heavy metal armor. But the latest Russian and Chinese tanks have a composite laminated armor that's specifically designed to blunt the Monroe effect, and that's why these TOW missiles aren't working against it.
Yeah, I believe they also have some sort of electronic system in the latest tanks, which pre-detonates the warhead about 10 feet away from the actual armor before it hits.
Yeah, there is that one as well. The Russian electronic countermeasures are just amazing. All right, listen, John, I need to let you go. We're running out of time, and I got a bunch of stories I need to cover. So thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to go ahead and close the phone lines. Let me just get, okay. No more calls for the rest of the day here. All right, getting on back to the news. We were talking about computers. We were talking about the embarrassment where Google crashed its own cloud server trying to do 2 updates at the same time. And if Google doesn't know how to manage their own systems, then we know it's become very, very decadent out there. We've been talking about Windows 10, the huge embarrassment from the anniversary edition, which has killed webcams on existing systems, and Microsoft is saying they're not even going to be able to fix this until sometime in September. The Windows 10 cumulative update, KB3176934, breaks the PowerShell. A lot of people have turned off automatic updates. A lot of people got into that habit during this push for everybody to move to Windows 10. They turned off the automatic updates. And, of course, it's a double-edged sword, because if you don't have the automatic updates, then you're stuck with the flaws that came with the operating system, and you're not getting the security updates. But we have had so many cases where Microsoft's updates are actually causing more harm than good. And it tells us that the technology has become so bloated and corporatized, they can't maintain it anymore. People seem to have forgotten, in the early days of computing, simplicity and elegance were considered signs of good code writing. And these days it's just, we'll rely on the CPU power and the memory and the hard drive, and we'll just throw this together, and the end user will think it's running okay because it runs sort of kind of quickly. This machine I have here is a dual boot. And actually it's a 3 boot. It's got Windows 7, it's got Windows XP, so I can run the software that wouldn't migrate to Windows 7, and it also runs Linux. When it's on Linux, you wouldn't believe how fast it is, because of how bloated and overloaded and complicated and obfuscated Microsoft Windows is. If I didn't need the video and audio and music production tools to support my lovely wife's music efforts, I probably wouldn't even go into Windows 10. I do everything under Linux. Because I grew up as a Unix wizard. When I finally started getting into real computers, that was the heyday of computer animation And everything was done, Kernighan and Ritchie C, and Unix, Berkeley Standard Distribution. Simple, elegant, easy to use, easy to find the problems and fix them. Now, both France and Germany are now calling for laws that would make it a crime for law-abiding citizens to decrypt any of their encrypted files on request by the government. Now, for a lot of very good reasons, it is the government we don't want looking at our encrypted data. We don't want them stealing naked pictures of our significant other to whack off to. We don't want them stealing our business secrets, and that has happened in the past. When Claire and I were living in Seattle, Washington, we were there when that whole Asia Pacific Economic Conference scandal went down, where U.S. intelligence agents were plundering secrets out of the computers of the conference attendees and giving them to Bill Clinton's cronies. This government cannot be trusted with your private data. I've lost count of the number of U.S. government agents who've been convicted of insider trading on the basis of plundering information from the computers of business owners. And if you're a business owner and somebody gets that inside information and they start doing insider trading, they can wreck your company. There have been companies that have almost been destroyed because somebody got hold of that information and used it to basically scam the stock market at the expense of the publicly traded company and the other investors. We have a right to privacy. It's guaranteed in the Constitution. They're not allowed to just prowl around in case they could find something. Now, you remember that hack not too long ago into the Equation Group and all of the NSA's top cryptographic tools, not cryptographic tools, hacking tools, are now available to cyber criminals all over the world. A language expert has looked at the text included in the device that was used to get into the NSA and said it's actually an English speaker trying to sound like they're a foreigner, because the errors in there don't make any sense when you talk about saying, is this really from Russia? Is it really from Israel? Is it really from France? No, it isn't. It's just somebody who was going through and putting grammatical and spelling errors in there to try and hide the fact that this was done by somebody in the United States. If you have an iPhone, there is a new scam coming on out from Netflix. Well, it's not from Netflix, but it uses Netflix logo. It's an email that claims you have purchased and downloaded a Netflix app from the iTunes store for a rather sizable amount of money, and it offers you a button to cancel the transaction, and if you click that button, you are infected. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I want to inject a dose of common sense into what's going on in our society in terms of scam phone calls, scam websites, malware, all the rest of it. We know our brick and mortar retail is in serious, serious trouble. And part of it is that people are buying things online. But our government is not enforcing the do not call list. They're not doing anything about all these scammers who are calling up. They're not doing anything about all the online cyber criminals and hackers out there. They're just not interested because they're not thinking. Because what's going to happen if you are like me and looking at your cell phone log, you have more scam phone calls than real phone calls. People are going to stop listening to everybody who calls, even legitimate businesses trying to do business. If this online scamming is not brought under control, people will stop buying things online. Rather than get burned, they're just going to learn to do without certain things. I don't really need blah. I don't care what eBay is selling it for. I don't really need this. If people cannot trust that when they go to a website they're going to be treated fairly and honestly, they're going to stop buying. And online commerce is going to follow retail commerce into an absolute ruin. Legitimate businesses are being harmed by the government's tolerance of scam artists. Legitimate commerce is being harmed by our government's refusal to deal with cybercrime. This is an epic failure by the federal government that takes so much money away from you and claims they're taking care of you, and they are not. Because the money has to go to redeem Treasury bonds. It has to prop up Wall Street. Now the Federal Reserve is saying they need another $4 trillion to keep from collapsing. To pay for all these wars that are just dragging on year after year after year after year. And of course, all this money pouring into Israel so that Israel can go and bomb the people of Gaza one more time. The quality of thinking coming out of Washington, D.C. is very poor. Nobody is maintaining an overview. Nobody is looking at the long view. It's all about the immediate election, the immediate agenda, what my sponsors want this week. And that's where their thinking stops. And that's why the government simply doesn't work properly any longer. Now, if you are my age, you remember the golden days of space exploration, and you remember that mighty Saturn V rocket that was built to go to the moon. Well, Russia is now designing their new super heavy rocket booster because they're going to go to the moon now, along with China and these other countries. So good for them. It'll be nice to see another space program out there, even if it isn't ours. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, you are all part of the independent media. Take what you know, what you learn here, share it with everyone that you know. Working together, we can shout down the corporate media and their millions and millions of dollars. I need your help on this. Talk to you tomorrow. Aloha, America.